last stop in our map process is P, property. We'll be looking at optimizing the size and quality of the property, achieving beneficial valuations, looking at the involvement of land in our strategy, looking at property that is close to amenities. We'll be discussing why newer houses are suitable for an investment strategy. We'll be looking at some of the site-specific considerations, and then we'll touch on the contracts as well. So first of all, optimizing the size and quality of the property. Now once again, looking at the market segments. First home buyers are on the lower end of the market. They don't spend too much on finishes, and they're looking for something with a low cost and something that will achieve some good valuations. Downsizers will pay for quality. They'll have smaller dwellings, and you'll be looking at something that is low maintenance for them. In an upsizer neighborhood, you'll be looking for higher quality builds, and you'll be looking to spend more on the finishes. The high quality will reflect in valuations in these neighborhoods, as they will have the ability to pay more for these properties. And on the luxury side of the market, you'll be looking at very unique properties that can fetch a very unique or high price. They'll have some very high-end finishes, but this market is very risky and highly liquid. So let's have a look at what buyers and tenants are willing to pay for. You want to look at the local area and find out what the typical tenant is and what the typical buyer is. How many bedrooms would they be looking for? How many car parks would they be looking for? What is the level of quality that is being built in this neighborhood? Is there a premium for a specific type of dwelling where there's an unmet demand in the marketplace? And heating and cooling. Are these things suitable given the local climate? We'll look at comparable sales. Basically, you want to find a market where there is a wide variety of comparable sales available. Now, the top end of the market consists of fewer properties and fewer comparable sales. This will make receiving a favorable bank valuation much more difficult. Now, you don't want to buy the most expensive property in the neighborhood because there won't be any comparable sales for that property. You want to buy around or below the median house price in the area. Then there will be plenty of comparable sales in that neighborhood. There might even be some more expensive properties or higher quality properties that are bringing up your valuation when it comes time to have your property valued. Ideally, you want to have some properties that are selling for 25% or more than your target property in the suburb. Let's have a look at the benefits of having decent land content. Basically, land content plus population growth will equate to capital growth. In the outskirts of a city, land content should be higher than the total floor space of the dwelling. You don't want to be building too many floors in a growth suburb, a growth region on the outskirts of the city. In the inner city, land is very expensive. So quite often you can perform well by investing in townhouses that can deliver growth, even though it may be on multiple floors. That is fine if you're in the inner city. The land is development potential. Keep in mind, for a cash flow strategy, land is much less relevant, but more land is always better for an investment strategy, if you can afford it, and if it makes investment sense. So we want the property to be close to amenities. In terms of transport, you want to have these links nearby. Being close to a bus route within 1 kilometre is ideal. 7 kilometres from a metro station will also help boost values. If you're even closer to a metro station, a train station, that'd be even better. This is much less relevant in regional areas where most people will just drive. You want to be close to educational facilities as well. Primary schools, high schools, even private secondary colleges. These will all help increase demand for your property for both tenants and buyers. Having shopping nearby also boosts the desirability of your property, as does having open space. Usually being within 400 meters from an open park or a field, that will bring a much nicer feeling and atmosphere to the whole neighborhood, and it will be a much more desired neighborhood to live in for families, tenants, and buyers. And we want to buy newer houses. Build new if we can. The benefits are, depending on the state that you're in, potentially lower stamp duty. You receive 40 years of depreciation with a new build. You don't have to worry about the maintenance issues early on with a new build. You would expect that it would be able to go quite a few years before any issues arise. When you're looking at an established property, it's just like a car. You could end up buying a lemon that needs to have a whole bunch of maintenance work done on it to be able to keep it up to a living standard for your tenant. You don't want to be in that mess. New builds have a builder's construction warranty. They have higher building quality than older buildings. There's a higher standard that must be met for the materials that they use and the engineering that is applied to these buildings. And they also have more tenant appeal. This higher tenant appeal can also lead to higher rental income, which can produce better yields or better asset values. You want to know the block. You want to know it quite well, and you want to know what covenants, easements, and restrictions there are on that block. You want to check the slope, grade, and site classification of the block, so you know how expensive it will be to build. Engineering can be very expensive. We want to get something with engineering as cheap as possible, so we want a block that is as flat as possible. And we want to be aware of the cost of rock excavation. We want to check flood and bushfire zoning to make sure that we aren't in an affected area. And we want to work with the builder or architect to make sure we are making the most of the block's features. You want to be wary of each house's access to natural sunlight as well. Each house should be designed with privacy in mind. Now, looking at the contracts, we want to make sure that there is a subject to finance clause in your contracts. So if you can't arrange finance, if something comes up, you lose your job, or the bank reneges on finance for whatever reason, you're not stuck with a property that you can't pay for. You want your contract, your building contract, to have a fixed cost, no variations clause. And usually this should cover site classification and rock excavation as well. But basically you just want to have a fixed price so you don't have any surprises coming up down the track. Some builders will put a contract in front of you that isn't fixed costs with no variations, and then they will slowly increase the cost of that build by throwing all these new elements at you. And if you've signed the contract, then you might have to end up paying for them. You want a completion timeframe guarantee, so you're not waiting 1, 2, 3 years for this property to be built. You want it to be built as soon as possible, and you want to be at the top of the list, the top priority of your builder, to make sure that yours is being built as a priority. And you want a full turnkey build. You want everything to be done. You don't want to be doing shopping for light bulbs and curtains and putting in driveways when you've got tenants in the house. It's too much work. It's not good for the tenant. It's a waste of your time. Get the place built when the builders are there. Don't build it 2 years down the track. Just get it done. And when you're building, you want to arrange an independent building inspector just to make sure that everything has been built the way it should be.